I don't believe Black Lives Matter, man. I don't believe. Hell, you know what? I just straight up say, you know what? I'm racist.
This is
I'm
your
racist.
post.
Yeah, I'm racist, man.
So I came close to saying your post was.
Well, let me ask the question first. Okay,
right,
so I'm racist. I admit it right here. I'm racist, man. I don't like black people. Why? Based on what you just said, right? Why should you be allowed to say that I'm wrong to feel that way? That's how I'm gonna rap on this for y'all.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Okay. Dummies discuss. Dummies. People like what's all the fuss. Dummies. You about to miss the bus. Dummies. And we're trying not to cuss. So this is two friends that kinda smart but really dummies. Talking ish and never stopping like the Energizer Bunny. He thinks he can get a yard, he has delusions, he's a star. Chance is addicted to Star Trek and Captain Jean-Luc Picard. His plate is full of it a little, like your old grandmother's stuff. And the others know so old school like David Ruffin. Shouts out to all the betas. Shouts out to my boy Jared. Hottest podcast up and coming. If you like it, go and share it. Dummies discuss. Dummies. People like what's all the fuss. Dummies. You about to miss the bus. Dummies. And we're trying not to cuss.
Yeah, man.
Right, so you posted this on Facebook, and then you said it in I think it was your last podcast.
Yeah.
You were talking about people moving to radical sides, the left moving farther left and the right moving farther right.
Right.
And I heard this when we were at Marietta. I heard this. I heard people saying, "Oh, there's no more moderates, and everybody's radical." And I know people who would say that defunding the police is I have family members who would say that defunding the police is incredibly radical.
Mm-hmm.
I know people. I have one of my wife's friends is a huge anti-vaxxer, and she thinks it's the worst thing for the government to force people to get vaccinations. That requiring vaccinations is incredibly extreme and radical, and it's just a terrible thing on her rights.
Right.
I've heard politicians talk about how the ERA is. I've heard female politicians say that the ERA is an extreme, that is unnecessary.
What's the ERA?
The Equal Rights Amendment.
Okay.
Specifically on gender.
Right. I've heard people talk about affirmative action being incredibly extreme and unnecessary. I've heard. I mean, so you did say, do you thought decriminalizing drugs was? Yeah. I mean, I think so. My point is this: I think sometimes it does. I also wanted to bring up there were certain things that like teaching evolution used to be extreme. You know, like having black and white children in the same classroom used to be extreme. It used to be an extreme position. I just think that sometimes we have to decide. I feel a little attacked when you say, well, both sides are getting too extreme. I'm not willing, these things that some people think are extreme, I'm not willing to budge on. So if that makes me a radical or too extreme for you, I'm sorry. I'm trying to move forward with what the things that I really, really believe are right and that are going to make our society move forward. So sometimes that might hurt somebody's feelings, and not that I've ever hurt somebody's feelings, but I just think sometimes you just have to say, if you're either going to jump on board with change that's going to happen, or you're going to get left behind. You know, I think there's a lot of things on this list that people are going to look back in 100 years or 150 years and look back on us now and go, what like barbarians they were for this existing or this. I don't want to, we can go on for days, but I really think that, you know, today's extremists are tomorrow's heroes.
Two things for you. Both of y'all, and Chance, we probably had this conversation off air, but let's say I don't believe Black Lives Matter, man. I don't believe. Hell, you know what? I just straight up say, you know what? I'm racist.
This is your post.
Yeah, I'm racist, man.
So I came close to saying, so your post was.
Well, let me ask the question first. Okay,
right,
so I'm racist. I admit it right here. I'm racist, man. I don't like black people. Why, based on what you just said, right? Why should you be allowed to say that I'm wrong to feel that way? What gives you the mantle of you're the chooser of what's right and wrong, of morality, if you will? You know what I mean? Just because, like, I heard everything you said, and I agree with a lot of it. But you said that, you know, I'm trying to make society better. Who's to say that your way is better, I guess? Who determines that? Neither one of y'all. What do you think?
I think people just get left behind.
Then people get left behind?
Yeah.
In a simple, what I want, you posted this to an extent too, and like you said, who gets to decide, you know, why you said, are they a good person or are they just wrong?
Yeah.
And I wanted to say they're a bad person and I get to decide. So if they think that, if somebody thinks that certain races are inferior to other races, they one have some sort of insecurity. There's something personally insecure about them, whether that is a collective that
what if I just learned it? What if I just learned it?
Then they've been taught wrong. Mm-hmm. That's an assumption. So the idea that a certain race is inferior to another is based on an idea that those races were that they were made differently by something other than environment and history. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? Like, you can't, like, the reason that people's skin colors are different is based upon where their ancestors are from. No, based on how their proximity to the equator.
Human migration. Yes.
Yes, it's simple as that. Those things, that being closer to the equator, can change you socially, but it doesn't then make one inferior and one superior. That's not possible. So if you think that, okay, then you're wrong. I said, I don't know. That makes me a bad person or a judgmental person for saying that thing is wrong. How many times we have to confront people about those things that are that blatant? Mm-hmm. You know else? You know how I know? You know how I know it's wrong? You know how I know that I don't feel any problem saying that? Because now they won't even come out and say that. They have to, for the last 50 years or 75 years, they've had to use coded language to hide the fact that that's how they actually feel. You know what I mean? We have to use code. We have to use codes. We can't say segregation anymore because we all know what segregation means. It means that we think that somebody who thinks segregation is real thinks that, you know, that white people are better than black people. So they find other terms they want to use. They use catchphrases that they know, that they can recognize, but then they can say, oh, that's not racist. That's not what I mean. Why does it always have to be about race? That's how I know, because they're hiding it. If it, you know.
What do you think, Chance?
I mean, I get what Kyle's saying. I think of it as a time thing. Like, you'll hear some people are ahead of their time, and some people have just been left in time, man.
So when we talk about in time, though, but like we're speaking as if racism is something that was recently a thing, recently came around. Like, racism has been here since day one.
But when we're talking about modern racism, it's born in the let's call it the age of exploration. That's where modern racism is born. It's born as an excuse to enslave Africans for profit. That's, to me, the modern. Like, you could say that there was different forms of racism before that, but like what we talk about racism today was created as like the white supremacist idea was a European idea because they felt that because they were Christian and because they were conquering other peoples, and it was an excuse for them to conquer other peoples. So
we're agreeing that I hear some feedback just now. Okay. We're agreeing that racism is when the idea that you're superior to another race. Yes. Supremacy, basically.
Yeah.
No, that's what racism. I get annoyed when I hear people use the word racist, just because I feel like a lot of us use it wrong, right? So if I say, I don't know, can't come up with an example right now, but a lot of times we'll call stuff racist when it's not really the definition of racism, right? So, but going back, but we have examples before the age of exploration of supremacy. We've always had, cultures where people were at the bottom of the caste system, where people were, whether it be classism, all the isms, period,
Yeah.
right? Isms,
Yeah.
period. That is something that is not going to go away. It just changes forms. We can all agree on that. We are historians. We know that the isms, supremacies, the gender, gender differences, gender supremacy and stuff like that. All that stuff is it. I posted the other day another quote, right? Are we that exceptional that history doesn't matter? We think that for some odd reason, we're the exception to what's happened before. We're going to have racism. It's not going away. You can't have a war on an ism, on a concept. That's why I always find it really, really interesting when we create these wars on this and wars on that. It's not something that's going to go away. If we get racial equality, then we're still going to have classism, or it'll be something else. It'll be your height now. Taller people are superior to shorter people. We're going to find something different from somebody else so that we can justify trying to be better than them. It's economics. It's this idea that there's limited resources and there's so many of us with unlimited wants. It's literally the definition of what economics is, the study of how we have these unlimited wants and we have these limited resources. As long as that is a thing on this earth, we will always come up with some kind of ism. We will always try to be superior to somebody else so that we can go up so we can spread our seed, survival of the fittest.
That's pessimistic to me, for starters. But I also think even if that is true, even if there's never going to be a world without these problems, we still should be trying to make it better. We still should be trying to get rid of evils.
But that's the question. What is better, right? So because that's what I'm saying. Like, better is, we're talking about morals now, right? You and I believe, all three of us believe, that you shouldn't judge somebody by the color of their skin. But that's just because that's what we were raised. That's our moral system. That's what we learned a lot through church. For many of us, our families who maybe have a history in the church, whatever it may be. Who gets to who gets to decide whose morals are better than somebody else? If I want to hate you, why can't I just hate you? Now, obviously, y'all know I don't feel this way, but I'm playing devil's advocate, but I'm trying to take an intellectual.
But nobody's taking that stance. Like, nobody's saying that that all morals are arbitrary. Everybody's saying that their morals are right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I know the point you're taking, and it's an intellectual argument to something that I might say, and it's a nice hypothetical. But I don't think anybody in reality actually feels that way. They feel like they're right. That's what morality is. They feel like whatever they believe is the right way to believe.
Yeah, so if I believe that Black people are inferior and they should be eradicated from this earth per se, and I believe that wholeheartedly, who is Kyle Fleming or who is Paul Chance to tell me that I'm wrong for feeling that way? See, this is one of those things, Chance, you said it, like, because we have freedom of thought in our country, I have the freedom to think that, and I should not be able to be persecuted for that. And that's what you see a lot of people, on the other side, this is the way they feel. Like, I don't know. I think we always try to act as if we try to teach our children altruism, right? And how to share, and that's the golden rule and all that. But that's not how our society actually functions, man. It's dog eat dog. It's race to the top. That's literally what we do in we have all these competitions and first place and all this stuff, and we try to always preach American exceptionalism. We're better than the rest of the world. Oh yeah, and by the way, Cher, if I keep telling my son that he's the best soccer player, you're better than everybody else. You're better. He's not going to go out there and pass the ball. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm trying to think right now.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where I totally agree with you, Kyle. You know that I think that if it's bigotry, whatever is bad, right? It's morally bad. It's reprehensible. It shouldn't be in our society. My argument always is that, look, if you're racist, then that's your problem. But if your racism affects my life and my livelihood, then that's my problem, right?
It almost always does do that. Like, I mean, especially when the racism is built within our systems. Like, it is different.
Yeah, that's totally different.
I think that we also think that, like, I think that my son said something really interesting to me. My oldest son is 11. And he said, I've had him listen to a few podcasts, and we watched a few movies, and I've had him read a few things, and I'm trying, you can't just throw all of it on him, this whole Black Lives Matter movement on him. I'm not sure he can comprehend or is ready for all of it. I'm not sure I'm ready to, do, but I want him to understand certain things, And he said, at my school, they just, like, the way they teach it is there was slavery, and then there wasn't, and then there was segregation, and then we had the civil rights movement, and then racism ended. And I think sometimes we that is kind of how some people feel. And I also think that there's this feeling like racism is just a certain way that people feel, and that if you get rid of, it's impossible to make people feel differently. Well, one, I don't think it is impossible to make people feel differently, but two, it isn't just that. It's that the people that historically have felt that way have been in charge, and they have set things up to make people like them continue to be more prosperous, and people that are not like them to be less prosperous. That's where it's problematic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it, man. The systemic part, I mean, I can't argue against it. I wholeheartedly understand, studied, and always preach about systemic racism and how that affects people, but I'm talking about, like, I meet Bubba down the street and he calls me the N-word. I'm not one of those people who's just gonna, those fighting words, I'm getting ready to fight, for my ancestors. Like, no, because I know I'm not that, you know what I mean? And especially for you, you don't know who the hell I am. What does how you feel about me have to do? It's not going to affect. Now, again, if that person across from me is the person who's going to hire me, or the person who's giving me my food, or whatever it may be, that's totally different, right? But for somebody to be,
okay, so, but okay, so that puts it in more of a vacuum. So in a vacuum, is there anything wrong? Like, who cares if someone is racist in that vacuum? Like you said, where if just outside of a system, there, whatever
outside of the system,
someone's thing. But the moment that's where your line is drawn. Of the moment you're within society with us, or just with anybody in general, then that is where the line has to be drawn. I don't know. Give me some random company.
Big Lots.
You're the CEO of Big Lots, and you were like, yeah, if I didn't have to, if I could not allow this group of people in my stores, I wouldn't allow them.
Yeah, obviously that affects me, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, that affects me. But if I ask, I ask you right now, Paul. Like, well, that's a bad example. I don't know. I asked Joe Blow on the street, does he think Black Lives Matter? He's like, hell no, they don't. You know what I mean? Hell no, Black lives don't matter. Get out my face, N-word. Like, that's not going to, like, affect me any. Would I actually look at that person as being very ignorant? I feel sorry for them, and then I keep my day moving because I understand what I have. You know what I mean? I'm happy with my family and my job and my.
Okay. That becomes a problem when there's a lot of that guy.
Is your question like why even engage, or why try to engage? Yes.
I guess we just came here because I don't know. I was playing devil's advocate, man. It's really just one of those, like, if somebody feels like Black lives doesn't matter, who am I to say that they're bad people for feeling that way, or that they're wrong for feeling that way?
Because unfortunately, more than likely, they're carrying that idea, out of that vacuum of just within their own personal life, and they're carrying that to work with them. They're carrying it out to
the ballot box.
Yep.
Yeah. Taking it to the ballot box, huh?
You know, if that person could say, well, I don't think Black Lives Matter, but when I go vote, you know, I have to make sure I'm following, you know, what we say everybody's equal. They're not doing that. That's where they're no longer, I guess, functioning within the rules we've set in society, or we're trying to set in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to use a Corona analogy just now, but then I started thinking, I was like, that doesn't work. So I was gonna say, if I see somebody on social media without a mask on and they're at a party or something, or nobody's wearing masks, I usually think, well, there you go, they're about to get it. And it doesn't affect me, right? But again, that's a bad analogy because I know they might go infect somebody else, and then that person, I get all of that, but I don't know. Oh, another thing, real quick.
I think that's how racism works too. What if
tell me.
They're then telling their kids, and then they can tell somebody else, or they could affect somebody else. I mean, I think that it works the same way. Mm-hmm. It works the same.
Touche.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm not going to tell you how to feel when somebody you know uses a racial slur to you. I'm a very, very privileged white male who has. I'm not telling anybody how to feel ever. You know what I mean? But if you're saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal, I think that it is a big deal. And I think that for every 5 people that would actually say it to you, there's 20 people who want to say it and won't. You know what I mean? I think the other thing is that, and what this causes, and this is why you don't want to hear this. This is why nobody wants to hear this. What I'm saying is because those situations cause conflict. This polarization is causing conflict, right? So like 1865 is a really, really, like, really violent year in our history. You know, 1968 is a really, really violent year in our history because that's when we had these polar opposites and that's when we had conflict. I think those are the years that bring change. So we don't just we don't move forward at the way we should by just compromising over and over and over until magically one day the right thing happens. Sometimes you have to force your way into the wrong side losing. Sometimes you have to win.
So
nobody wants to hear that.
Okay.
So one of the things, go ahead, Chance.
So thinking about it this way, are we experiencing the issue with like social media, right? So our friends list has hundreds of people, maybe a 1,000, low thousands. You know, most people I would say don't have 3, 4, 5,000 people on their friends list. So are we seeing what seems to be a polarization that most people are on either the far left or far right? And what it actually is still people are
That's your echo chamber?
Not so much the echo chamber, but what you're seeing is like a tug of war trying to pull the moderate group one way or the other. But now we're seeing it through a lens of social media where because when you think about it, and I just had this thought process while we were talking, like I can think of the handful of people that I see on my Facebook, feed that are either real far to the left or real far to the right. And I just realized on camera that real far to the left
is reversed.
To the right, real far to, I don't know. It's
got you.
Which for some reason to me, but are we just confusing what we see with there no longer being a moderate group?
I think, well, what I learned in grad school, man, Georgia State political science department took 11 courses and all that. I think 11 or 12, something like that. No, more than that. Regardless, in grad school, the overarching theme that I came across in every single class is that we are as polarized now as we were pre-Civil War.